Hello everyone, we are now into the top 100 favorite novels of all time. In this part, we are going to get into books that start being 5 stars on Goodreads, which, by the way, is book number 96, is the first book on this list that I have given 5 stars on Goodreads. And we are trying to work through these pretty quick, because this is a lot of books, and my videos are usually too long. So, coming in at number 100 is the only book I have read by this author, The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle, which is a magical and wondrous story that can be read and enjoyed at literally any age. I was encapsulated from the first paragraph and description and writing into some of the best line-by-line writing that I have read, and really is a story that manages to pack in a lot more depth than it has right to, while very subtly, without feeling like it would have been enjoyable even if it was just this straightforward tale, but manages to pack in depth. Next up, you are going to notice as we move up this list, there's a direct correlation between how far into this series we get and the amount of books that are written by Robin Hobb. And coming in at number 99 is Renegade Magic by Robin Hobb, which is the final book of the Soldier Son trilogy. This is a final book that I think, in terms of narrative structure and what is going on, takes more risks than, almost every other trilogy that I have read. And for me, they, for the most part, really, really paid off. And I really enjoyed, the character work is still so good. Nevere can be very frustrating. He makes Fitz look like a genius at times. But all the characters are so interesting, and I thought the ending was extremely good. Coming in at number 98, we have Barrayar by Lois McMaster Bujold, the second book in the Vorkosgan saga. This one, I think, is definitely the deeper and more emotionally complex story than the previous Vorkosgan novels I've mentioned, and maybe even a couple of Vorkosgan novels I have above it. It is maybe not quite as addictive as some of the other novels, but Bujold is just, again, such a good character writer and such a good plotter that the floor is so high. Coming in at number 97, another author you are going to see more and more as we get up the list, is River of Stars by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is one of the widest Guy Gavriel Kay stories. It has an insane amount of point of views. It POV hops like a madman. And the first time I read it, I thought it was kind of unfocused, and I appreciated it way more in hindsight when I knew where we were going. And just as normal with Guy Gavriel Kay, the writing and storytelling is so good, the dialogue is so good, and the ending is so unbelievably good. And coming in, number 96, the first book, if you go check my rating on Goodreads, get 5 stars, is Dead Beat by Jim Butcher. This is the first really good Dresden novel, in my opinion. It doesn't have any one aspect of it that makes it some game-changing thing from the previous Dresden novels. I think it's just better than the previous ones at everything. Harry was an interesting character before. I think he's at his best in this novel of the first 7. Some of the side characters were well realized in the previous novels. Some were a little bit more of archetypical, as Jim would describe them, and they really start to stand out in this. I think this has the best plot twist of the first 7 novels by far, and then almost every book after this has a really good plot twist, although I think the one in here stands up to anything. And it also just has a bloody, crazy final act and some hard-hitting, poignant moments. And so it gets number 96. Coming in at the number 5 spot is another novella that I do not own physically, and the second thing from the man who wrote these books, and that is Queen Amid Ashes by Christopher Rocchio, which I think is a main Sun Eater quality novella, just shorter, unlike, say, Lesser Devil, that I like quite a bit less. And I actually haven't read Dregs of the Empire. It's really embarrassing. I have to get to that. But I think Queen of Amid Ashes is really excellent. It takes place between Howling Dark and Demon in White, and I would highly, highly recommend reading it. It really forces Hadrian to confront himself and has some epic lines. I know this was written really well, because I forget what novel I read it at, but I read it after reading a Guy Gavriel Kay novel, and I still read it, and I was like, damn, the prose in this is nice. 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 beating it out by one spot at spot number 94 is Boy's Life by Robert McCammon, which is McCammon, which is the only novel from this author that I have read. This is a novel that really doesn't make sense that I like it this much, because when you read it, it feels like it should be relying on nostalgia for small-town life in the United States of America. And I do not have any nostalgia for small-town life in the United States of America, but it still was extremely compelling because of how true to life it is. I think this is definitely one where the characters are greater than the sum of their parts. There's such a sense of community and culture that bleeds through the page. Coming in at spot number 93 is Augustus by John Williams, another novel that is the only novel I have read by this author. This has all the things that you would think I like. Here's a list of things that I like. Efficient character writing, epistolary novels, ancient Rome. What does this have? All three of these. This novel is just a bunch of letters, and still you get to know some of the characters involved better than you get to know characters involved whose perspectives you are in for thousands upon thousands of pages. He's a truly, truly excellent character writer. And man, that last part is so, so good. But beating it out by one spot is Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. This is the final book for now in the First Law series saga. I don't know what it is, but it's also the final book of the Age of Madness trilogy, and I think it is a truly excellent ending. This, I think, has some of Abercrombie's most heartfelt character moments of any novels he has written, where characters aren't just being interested or being it's still cynical in the outlook of humanity, but it allows characters to grow and progress in ways that I find more compelling. But it is not my favorite Joe Abercrombie novel, although some days it is. I've switched between these two probably 20 times, but on this day, my favorite Joe Abercrombie novel is A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie, which is definitely not the consensus favorite book in this trilogy, but it is my favorite. I think this has, pretty much all the other amazing stuff the other two novels in Age of Madness has, but I think it has more of a focus on the relationships between family members, who I can't say because it gives away who lives through, but I really, really love that part of it. I think it has more of a focus in this than any other Joe Abercrombie novel, and it is why to this day it is my favorite Joe Abercrombie novel. You might have noticed that the last 15 spots were very Joe Abercrombie heavy, and Joe Abercrombie concentrated, and now he's suddenly going to disappear from the list. And this is for a very specific reason, that Joe Abercrombie is really good at writing, so I really like a lot of his books, but his level of cynicism differs so much from me that it is hard for him to ever write a book that is truly an all-time favorite. So he ends up writing a lot of books where I'm like, damn, that was really good, but not any books where I'm like, that's one of the best things I've ever read. Maybe this one is actually just my favorite because it has a Robin Hobb cover quote. A tale of brute force and subtle magic set in a world on the cusp of an industrial revolution. Buckle your seatbelts. So, while doing this, I realized I forgot a book earlier. Whoopsie. And I just want you to imagine that The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe was in between The Bone Hunters by Stephen Erickson and Shadows Linger by Glenn Cook. Because I do like that novel more than Citadel, Earth, or Claw. Anyway, moving on to number 90. We have a book that is more flawed than it has any right to be this up the list. I know we're at spot 90, but I started this at 150 because I was going through my list, and 150 were the novels where I was like, 150 was the even number, where I looked at 150, I'm like, I think all these novels are distinctly awesome. 190 is really flawed. It's too long. It's not paced well. But I've read it twice now, and on the second time I've decided that I don't care because I like the good stuff so much, and it is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which has the highest highs and the highest lows, in my opinion, of the Farseer trilogy. The highs get out of the way right away. The first two chapters of this book, the first time I read this book, 2 chapters in, it was on pace to be a 10 out of 10. And this was before Robin Hobb was my favorite author. This one I was like, I quite like Robin Hobb. And this is when I was like, she has the potential to write all-time favorite books for me. And at the time, she just hadn't. And then, man, this book has a lot of good scenes, but it also, like, it is paced. Like, I like to joke about this book that there's a scene from the movie Whiplash where, I forget this guy's name, famous author. He's yelling at the drummer, like, are you rushing or are you dragging? When actually the drummer is just, like, playing it perfectly. If he was to yell at Robin Hobb, while writing this book, were you rushing or were you dragging? Robin Hobb would be like, I was doing both. Anyway, moving on to spot 89 is The Sword of the Lictor, which is, of course, what made me realize that I hadn't included Shadow the Torturer, because I was like, wait a second, The Sword of the Lictor is my favorite book in Book of the New Sun. We haven't gotten to Shadow the Torturer yet. This is the book where I think Severian is at its coolest. It has some of the most, like, random stuff. It's got Typhon. It's got Little Severian. Those things were so cool. So it ended up being my favorite novel in Book of the New Sun. So once upon a time, I asked an author whose books I'd read, and he knew that I liked his books. Hey, if I read Book of the New Sun and I like it less than your series, will you think I have bad taste? He's going to live with me having bad taste, because directly above Sword of the Lictor is Ashes of Man by Christopher Rocchio, who would highly, highly disagree with this being better than The Sword of the Lictor. But tough Rocchio. I think Gene Wolfe's books are probably more impressive than a lot of the books I have above him, but in terms of how much I enjoy reading them and the emotional resonance, I prefer these ones. So, Ashes of Man is my fourth favorite Sun Eater novel. It has, I think, maybe... Oh, damn, he's got a lot of good falling actions. Because it has maybe the best falling action of any part of the Sun Eater. I think it's got some of the best characterization of side characters. It probably does have the best characterization of side characters in any book in the Sun Eater series. The main thing that holds it up behind Disquiet Gods, Howling Dark, and Demon in White is not quality of writing. Those books simply have more cool stuff in them. Coming in at number 87 is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, which is somehow the first Robert Jordan on this. How did we have that long of a stretch with no Robert Jordan? I'm guessing, like, there's a couple right below 150. I'm going to guess, like... Okay, Dragon Reborn at, like, 166. And then there's going to be a bunch above it. It's weird that there's that big of a space with no books by Robert Jordan. But The Great Hunt is kind of the Wheel of Time books that are my favorite Wheel of Time books, it's my least favorite. It's held up extremely well. The Flicker chapter is so good. It's maybe the tightest Wheel of Time book. This, or like maybe Knife of Dreams, maybe. I really like Rand in this book. A lot of people still find Rand boring, but I liked Rand from the start, and the ending is crazy because it's a Wheel of Time book. But beating it out by one spot is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak, a book that I read recently because Kyle asked me to. This is a novel that really has a long list of similar prose as The Boy's Life, but I think the setting of 1940s Nazi Germany is more interesting in the setting than small town US in the 50s. So, as a result, I prefer it. Okay, coming in spot number 85, we have the Hugo winner. This is an author that has not been on this list before and will not be on this list again, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I have only read 3 N.K. Jemisin books, the 3 books in this trilogy, and this is by far my favorite of the 3, but that it is my favorite of the 3 because it is genius. The start of this novel is so good. The setup of all 3 of like the main perspectives, what it does with perspective is brilliant. The setup of the world is incredible. It's just line by line, written with such a strong voice. Like, it's so visceral. It's so like memorable while maintaining clarity. It goes so hard. Anyway, we are moving on to The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu, which is the first collection of short stories that we have on here, and I think there's only going to be 2 collections of short stories on this entire list. My 2 favorites of this are The Man Who Ended History and The Paper Menagerie. Mono Noah Ware is also a banger. It's pretty consistently good with some truly standout, genius short stories. Coming in at number 83 is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, which is another author where this is their first appearance and will unfortunately be their last. I have read a number of Le Guin books. I've read all of Earthsea. I've read World for World is Forest. I've read Left Hand of Darkness, and I've read this. And I've enjoyed all of them. But this is my favorite by far. And ever since I've read this, like, I read all of Earthsea first, and then I read this, and I was like, oh, like, Le Guin sci-fi, I'm going to like it so much more than the fantasy. And it has been a little bit of an outlier. I found this immediately extremely compelling. It's both intellectually interesting and emotionally compelling. The way the cultures were differentiated in the first chapter was so well done. The writing is brilliant. It's hard-hitting and does not pull punches. Coming in at 82 is a collection of novellas, which is not a collection of short stories and does not mean that I was wrong 3 minutes ago when I said that I only have 2 collections of short stories on here. That is Borders of Infinity by Louis McMaster Bujold, which has... I know what happens in all 3. I forgot the titles. The third one is called Borders of Infinity, which if it was just that novella would be higher. Talking too much, starting to cough. I'm going to have to stop after 75 and record the rest another day, gang. I might not have the stamina for this. But Borders of Infinity, the third story, I think is brilliant. It's such an incredible concept for a novella. It's Miles at his best. It gets referenced a bunch throughout the later Vorkoskin books chronologically. And then the first one was also brilliant. The second one was really good and had a setting that ended up being really important later and was really well fleshed out. It just had some weird moments in it that are just like, why? Why, Lois? Anyway, coming in at 81 is Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. Although this is kind of in a unique spot because I think if you look on Goodreads, I still have this at 4 stars. That is because I have read this novel twice. The Lightning. We're checking this live. Really like that title. Too Like Lightning. I believe I have it 4 stars on Goodreads. So, how is it above these? I did something unique with Too Like Lightning. Oh no, I put it at 5 stars. So I gave it a slightly lower rank, and then I thought it improved on reread because, believe it or not, when you actually know, like, this is a novel where the first time I read it, the like macro story going on was extremely hard to follow. I was really enjoying the scenes on the micro level, but I was kind of like, where is this going? For about 2/3 of the novel, but still was really enjoying it. And then the last chapter really brought it all together and made me kind of like the entire novel. Then I read the entire series and reread Too Like Lightning, and it's like the amount of stuff going on, plus all the other stuff that I already had mentioned when I first read it that I read was brilliant, made me enjoy it even more. Thing is, I don't disagree with my first rating from the perspective of that's how enjoyable of a reading experience I think it is for a first-time read. Like, sometimes I reread and change the score because I'm like, I should have read this better the first time. This one, I'm like, no, I think I actually read it quite well. It's just inherently more enjoyable on reread. So this is its score after reread, and it gets number 71. Okay, time for the last 5 books of this video, where we get to spot number 95. And coming in spot number 80. Or I think we're only getting to 76. I almost included 75. That'll be for future Jake. I think I'm done recording for the day. But number 80 is Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio. Might be able to tell because normally it's forward facing back there and you can see it. So anyone who noticed that before I said that, good job. Howling Dark is my 3rd favorite novel in the Sun Eater series. I think it has one of the best settings that I've ever read. The writing is amazing. I think Hadrian's development continues to be awesome, and the story is bonkers. I do think for the entire series, the biggest relative weakness Rocchio has is characterization of side characters, and I think he distinctly improved after Howling Dark at that skill, so it is below, which is what holds it back from being even higher. After that, we have a book I do not own physically, which is The Death of Ivan Ilyich, by good old Leo Tolstoy. Man, I made my top 10 books video and someone told me how to pronounce that correctly. And I was like, oh, I'll remember that. And now I don't remember it. And that means I just pronounced it wrong. If you're watching this as well, I'm sorry, man. You told me and I forgot, and that's on me. So this is obviously a classic that's been read for centuries. And when I read it, it was very obvious why it had been read for centuries, because it's really excellent and definitely has caused multiple people to have existential crises. The way it forces you to face death is almost uncomfortably good. The reason it's not higher is because the novel is about an average dude dying boringly. And there's just only so good that... But this is as good of a novel can be. about an average dude, an unexemplary dude dying boringly. Next up is Exhalation by Ted Chiang, which is my favorite short story collection that I have ever read. My favorites in here are The Truth of Fact and The Truth of Fiction, which if I were setting the readings that people have in high school, this would be a novel that high school students read, because I think it's like a novel that everyone should read to be aware of how the human mind works and how that human mind, how that should think of how you treat interactions you've had with people and think about what might have happened from other people's perspective. It also has a 4-page short story called What's Expected of Us that is trash. But fortunately, it's only 4 pages, so it doesn't really bring down the average of the novel at all. Next up is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is the first and only novel I've read by Agatha Christie. By the way, actually, this was also going to be the only time you will see Mr. Leo, and this will be the only time you will see Ted Chiang. I have read Stories of Your Life and Others, but it did not make the cut. But this is here because this is the only novel I have read by Agatha Christie, and it was excellent. I read it last year, reasonably late. It's obviously a very famous novel. It's one of the best-selling novels of all time. An extremely, extremely good murder mystery that works because of how well the characters work and how well their motivations work and how, it just feels unbelievable, but then there is a good explanation. 76. The last novel you will see in this part is The Last Light of the Sun by Guy Gavriel Kay, which I believe is the 4th Guy Gavriel Kay book that I have had on this list. This is his Norse book. I think it has his lowest average rating on Goodreads of any of the books he's written, and a lot of people say this is their least favorite Guy Gavriel Kay book. I don't understand this. This book is awesome. It's got some of the best supernatural elements he's ever written. Great cast of characters. The ending is awesome. It's plotted really tightly. I literally don't get it. This book rules. And then I have a book here. It was book 75, and that will be revealed in a future video. So this was my 100th through my 76th favorite book of all time. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Have a good day. I'm probably not going to record the next ones. I'm starting to get a little tired of talking. So you'll probably, whenever I upload the next one, it will be in a different shirt with a different haircut, and you'll be like, he ran out of stamina. Or I'll be wearing the same shirt, and you'll be like, he got a second wind, like an hour after recording this. Anyway, have a good day, everyone.